Thank you. Time right now for Financial Focus. Our friend Steve Budin is here this Monday to talk about everything going on this week. It's a big week. A lot of people looking at their finances and money because, of course, it's tax day on the 15th. We're going to get to that in just a moment. But first, we want to talk about unemployment, jobless claims. The number actually high. Yeah,
it came in a little bit higher than average. Two big economic reports this morning, the unemployment claims from late last week and the import prices from this morning. The unemployment claims actually went up a little bit over the last couple of months, but that's not necessarily a bad thing. The crazy way all of this is calculated is you're not considered unemployed if you're not actively looking for work. So the fact that more people are actively looking, there may be more jobless claims in the system, but that means more people are actively looking. So it's not necessarily a bad thing. It's just a weird way that they calculate it. And then the import prices, we've seen this with the strong dollar, a lot of foreign goods coming into this country. Prices dropped about 0.3%, which is pretty much estimated. So the market didn't move on it, but it just goes to show that inflation, for the most part, is under pretty good control.
And imports also bittersweet, right? It's good for consumers, not necessarily for businesses.
That's right. If you're a company that exports items, your products are getting more expensive. So the fact that the import prices are going down, if you're a domestic company competing with those prices, you may have to lower your prices to compete. Conversely, if you're a multinational that sells goods overseas, your prices are going up. So good news, bad news scenario on that situation.
Also looking at earnings season and kind of forecasting the rest of the year, correct?
Alcoa traditionally is the first company to report. They're coming out this week. And a lot of companies are beginning to talk down the estimations that the market is making. So I don't expect the markets to move much because we're expecting really a bad season based on the strong dollar and the economy being, tepid at best. So unless there's a major surprise to the upside or the downside, I don't expect any of these earnings to really move. What's interesting is this is the first time in a few years that we're expecting earnings to drop year over year. So the markets tend to try to guess what happens. If they're surprised, they'll move, but if they're not, should be okay.
You mentioned the dollar very strong overseas. A lot of people counting their dollars this week. Filing taxes, and you only have a day and a half, really, 2.5 days.
And I just read today that there's still over 10% of American filers will wait till this week to file.
Wow.
The big takeaway from this is, and I know there's a story coming up about avoiding scams, but you can file an extension on April 15th to defer the filing of your taxes, but you still have to pay. So you may have to make an estimated payment on April 15th, but anything that goes past the 15th, you do have to pay interest and penalties on. So just because you extend doesn't mean you extend the time you pay. So just keep that in mind.
Sure, it doesn't mean that you're just in the clear and you just grab more time. There's
a
lot going, a lot going into that as well. Again, but people trying to file this year, we're seeing a lot more electronic filing, which is pretty interesting.
It's a record high for filing, which is what the scams can come from, electronic filing, because a lot of times if you're not looking at the return that closely, or your accountant is doing it electronically, some of the scams out there is people try to front run that, knowing that since you're not paper filing, you don't even know what's happening until your refund doesn't show up. If your refund doesn't show up, then you know there's a problem.
Yeah, the good
and usually,
bad.
Once the cash is gone, the IRS isn't going to pay you twice, right? So you have to go back and try to fix it, and that could become a headache.
Yeah, the good and bad of digital.
That's right.
We're going to talk about those scams coming up here on Midday. Stay with us, everyone. Steve, good to see you. Midday, we'll be right back, everyone.